But right now, Sal Mercogliano, the ports are closed, man. They're all Spirit Halloweens now, according to Ramp Capital. I know you've been incredibly busy covering all this stuff, Sal. What's the latest right now? I saw from Lorianne, it sounds like there's nothing going on. The ILA said they're waiting to hear from the USMX, and the USMX said they have no updates.
Dooner, it's quiet. There's nothing much going on in shipping at all. Holy cow. It's ridiculous what is happening right now. The Maritime Alliance and the ILA, which are at loggerheads here, they've been negotiating via press releases, are really going back and forth. So what we saw at the last minute before the strike on midnight was Maritime Alliance came out with an offer that looked pretty good. I mean, 50% pay raise. They were offering 3 years of 3 times the amount of retirement money for the members. They were talking about expanded health care. And the biggest concession they made was they were agreeing to hold in place and lock in place semi and automation in the ports. The ILA has come out and refused it. They've just basically said no. We've seen Harold Daggett on the picket line. He has come out and said no. You have the White House come out with a press statement from the president saying that the U.S. Maritime Alliance, which is largely composed of foreign shipping companies, needs to make good to the ILA. So if you're the ILA, you are in the driver's seat right here. There is no reason for you to sit back to do anything but to wait until you get what you want, which is the 77% pay raise. They want some container royalties coming in. That's a new one that they've added to this. And they want to make sure that there is not going to be automation that replaces their jobs. This is bad news for everybody else, because what this means is that the port strike may continue longer than we thought. I was envisioning that based on that offer by the U.S. Maritime Alliance, close to what the ILA wanted, that they would sit down at the table at the end of the week and maybe hash out a deal by next week. Now it looks like the ILA wants to maybe push this a little bit longer.
Oh, it sure does. I mean, Daggett was bad. And if you haven't heard, like, the normies, the people who don't follow freight, they're not like obsessed with this stuff. They're finally hearing who this guy is. They're hearing that interview from 3 weeks ago when he said he wanted to cripple the supply chain. That clip has been played over and over again ad nauseum. And it's really turned the public against the ILA's cause. But I think it's worth giving some clarity just to listeners who are not familiar with the players who are at stake here. Now, the ILA, those are the dock workers from Maine to Houston at the ports. But you mentioned the USMX. A lot of foreign companies are in that. What is the USMX for those who are not familiar, just so people are clear on who they're fighting?
Yeah, I mean, Daggett's out of Central Casting. If you ask, to come up with a union boss, that's who you come up with. But, I did a long Twitter thread today where I did this. It's like, listen, what you're seeing right now is the ILA. You're not seeing the Maritime Alliance. And I think that's a key thing that the news agencies need to do. They need to go get the Maritime Alliance. So if you look at the Maritime Alliance, it's really made up of 3 things. It's made up of the port associations, those are the port operators. It's made up of the stevedoring companies, and it's made up of the ocean shippers. But the majority of seats on the board of directors of the U.S. Maritime Alliance are held by foreign companies. One of the largest port associations, for example, is Ports America. That is owned by the Canadian Retirement Fund. So Canadian retirees own most of the ports in the United States. But the 7 big shipping companies that are on the board, and it's a who's who of shipping companies. We're talking about Maersk from Denmark. We're talking about Hapag from Germany. We're talking about CMA CGM from France. We're talking about ONE from Japan, Evergreen from Taiwan. We're talking about, most importantly, Costco, not Costco, the big box store, but Costco, the Chinese overseas shipping company. That's a state-held company by mainland China, communist China. So, there used to be communism in longshoremen all the time. Now we got communism negotiating with longshoremen for this new contract.
Leading up to this, there were some deflectors. Oh, it'll never happen. The government will step in. Someone's going to stop it. Now that it has happened, I'm on LinkedIn. Some of these same logistics professionals are like, well, it's only going to last a day or two. I don't know if these people are really talking to the right people. I don't know if they're listening to Daggett. The reason I was so concerned leading up to this, and people were like, oh, it's clickbait, it's not going to happen. I had the CEOs of giant global 3PLs DMing me like, I think this is going to happen. We're pretty certain this might happen. Prepare. Daggett, when asked how long this will last, he said to ILS Daggett to Wall Street Journal's Paul Berger, and I quote, he said, I don't have a effing crystal ball between my legs, but it will last very long. I would tell you that.
First of all, you got to love Daggett. He is absolutely the guy you want to interview at all times because of what he says. Back in June, I put a video up where I said this is going to happen, and the reason I said it was going to happen is because number one, I was talking to ILA members, and they were hearing from their bosses, hey, stockpile, don't get yourself in any purchases that are going to be a problem because come October, there's going to be an issue. They were setting this up from the very beginning. And I think if you're Harold Daggett of the ILA, you had to look what happened with the ILWU on the West Coast and the PMA. They saw that negotiation. They took that, what happened there, and they modified their rule book. They looked at what happened with the United Auto Workers, with Boeing, with everybody else. And Daggett is putting himself and the ILA out there as the barrier to these foreign shipping companies. That's the narrative he's trying to propel. And it's taking hold because he's getting it from the White House. He's getting that image. Now, what you're seeing shot back at the ILA is, these are guys and women that make six-figure salaries. I had somebody text me just the other day from the ILA saying, yeah, I'll eventually make six figures, but I'm not doing it right now. It takes me 6 years to work my way up just to be a full-time employee with the ILA. This is not an easy thing. And again, what they're trying to do is convey this narrative. And I think the Maritime Alliance, we need to dig deeper into them and see who they are, because what you haven't seen is the shipping company guys come out. I've already seen Harold Daggett's yacht quite a bit. Show me, Vincent Clerk's yacht from Maersk. I guarantee you he's got a nice big yacht, and he's one of the major shipping companies here that are controlling this issue. And let's not forget, one of the big issues that the ILA have is automation, but wages. You and I talked about this a lot during the supply chain crisis. Those amount of wages and money that the shipping companies made was astronomical. Last time they negotiated this contract was 2018. 2018 was a net loss for the container liners. Now in 2024, they have the biggest years they ever had, 2021, 2022, and 2023, and they are peaking back up again because of the Houthi in the Red Sea. And this strike, by the way, is going to make the shipping companies even more money because they're going to start laying surcharges, demurrage, you name it. They're going to see a lot of surcharges coming on shippers here, and in the end, it's always the consumer who's going to pay for it.
No doubt about it, Sal. And, I'm glad you mentioned the ILWU and what went on with the contracts there, because to get the perspective of the union workers, which I'm not really hearing too much on the media either, I want to play this clip from someone from the ILU just so you can hear how they are thinking. Let's play that one.
I'm a longshoreman for LA Long Beach, and ILA is fighting against this right here. I'll tell you right now. See that? There's nobody there. Automation. I work at an automated dock. It's no joke. They're losing thousands of jobs. So you got all these machines. Look at all these machines right here. There's no people. They ain't paying no taxes. They ain't paying no money. This is what ILA is fighting about. This all used to be filled with top handlers, UTR drivers, clerks, all this yard. Look how big this yard is. And there ain't hardly any people on this thing. This is what they're fighting about. I work at an automated dock right here, Port of LA, Long Beach. Keep fighting, brothers. Keep fighting.
Keep fighting. They said that they are going to stand by the strike. Will the ILWU refuse diverted containers? That's something I was reading in the Freightwaves white paper today. Do you think there's any chance of that?
That's a tough one for them. They're under a no strike clause, so they can't go on strike because of the agreement they just had. And it is very difficult to sort out containers that were coming from the East Coast and now coming from the West Coast. I think they're going to be more of a voice of solidarity. But that clip you played from TikTok is a really good one because Daggett, in his candid conversation, which is anything but candid, talked about that. He talked about the fact that the LBCT terminal, Long Beach Container Terminal, basically used to have 800, longshoremen working there. Now it's got a handful working there. And I think this is really the key thing. And this is where I fault a lot of people, especially in the government right now for this, is that they needed to get the Maritime Alliance and the ILA sitting down and hammering this out. We need to automate ports. There's no question about that. This is an evolutionary process. You're going to see automation come in here to make yards more productive, more effective, because we can't build new container yards in the U.S. We're basically stuck with what we have. But there has to be a process whereby the members of the ILA who have put in their years, and more importantly, the retired members, can be guaranteed that they're going to get their payouts, that they're going to be safe, and that the ILA as an organization is safe. I think what Daggett is most worried about is what's been happening with unions in general, that the ILA will break up into its individual ports and then the shipping companies can play the ports off each other. We see that happening right now. I mean, we see the ports being played off each other all the time. Really, the one unifying agent here is the ILA. And let's be clear, not everyone's in support of the ILA. There are pilots associations right now that are upset with the ILA because ships aren't coming in. They're losing money. There are tug operators in the ports that are losing money right now. So, I mean, the longer this strike goes on, the more impact it's going to have. And I think the ILA is going to be very careful that they don't go past that point of blowback against themselves. Right now, people are commenting on them. They're pointing their attention at Daggett. But if all of a sudden all the woes are going to be blamed on the ILA, that's going to be a negative for them. That's why I don't think it'll last as long as some people are now saying.
Yeah, I mean, strategically, I think Daggett, I mean, I like that tough talk, but I think when he started going cripple and stuff like that, it just gave that soundbite that is needed to make it look really bad what they're doing, where it's maybe a larger issue that where he's just such a lightning rod. For example, let's listen to an ILA wife. I have got a clip from one of them right now.
Shame on you, longshoremen and dock workers.
Shame on you, lady, for buying into the bullshit media that these multi-billion-dollar companies are putting out, trying to turn the American public against the longshoremen. You are the problem. A contract is redone between the ILA and the companies every 6 years. The last contract, the companies agreed not to automate. And guess what? They did it the anyway.
That was the thing. You know, that's a funny one. They were contentious. This was one port where they had like automated pre-gate check-ins, and that was like a bridge too far for the ILA, which is, you know, it's kind of crazy. This is such a complicated one because there's some truck drivers who are like, I support it, I don't support it, but there is a very big amount of self-interest by the ILA. They're not trying to make the drayage truck drivers' life easier. They're not trying to make the sailors on the ship's life easier. They're trying to enrich themselves.
They are. And again, you know, if you're watching these container companies and you're seeing them come in and you're seeing the profits they've made, again, you know, it's ludicrous number we're talking about. And what did the container companies spend their profits on? Well, they bought terminals. They've kind of brokered out into new logistics firms. Mediterranean shipping has got an air element to them now. So, I mean, you see that happening. And, you know, again, they negotiated when they went to the 6-year contract, they went to that because they made the argument this will create stability, which means that they should have been negotiating prior to this in longer ways. The gate down in Mobile is a really interesting one because that gate's been there for a while. It's not like it happened last night. I think the ILA has been sitting on that because they wanted to use that as kind of the cause for war here and be able to trigger that. But it's a good example of how you need to get more productive. You know, when you look at the issues that slow up U.S. ports, you know, we're looking at the ILA. You know, one group we're not talking about is the CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, how long it takes to clear customs and get containers out of the terminal, how long it takes to clear ships coming in and out of the port with the Coast Guard. We have a lot of security in the ports to make sure that nefarious things don't come into the U.S. That slows things down in U.S. ports. And there's a lot of elements at play here. It's not just the ILA. And I would argue that the narrative here is not being done very well. I don't think the U.S. Maritime Alliance is being challenged enough. Where's their spokesman? Where is the spokesman from them? Was the CEO of the Maritime Alliance? Where are the heads of the shipping firms? Where are the port directors in these different ports? Let's get them out there and be more visible. What we tend to see right now is Daggett, because Daggett's the magnet. He's the one who's saying all the great sound bites that everybody wants. But behind the scenes, this is what needs to go. We know that the administration is talking to them. We've heard that Buttigieg is talking to them. We've heard that the acting Secretary of Labor is talking to them. A little disappointed the Secretary of Commerce had no idea this was happening. That's kind of disturbing. Yeah. But we really need this discussion to take place.
We absolutely need to have this discussion to take place, Sal. And, you know, the funny thing is you mentioned there's these conspiracy theories going on. Some people are like, oh, they use this strike, they use the hurricane as leverage, or they're doing it so Kamala Harris can swoop in, or people share that picture of Trump and they say, oh, this is all a ploy so that when Trump gets elected, it gets stopped. But like the fact of the matter is, this isn't new. This is only new to like normies. Like this is a 6-year contract and they went on strike the minute it ended. Like they didn't go early, so I don't really see what the conspiracy is. I mean, I understand it's bad timing with the hurricane, but this has been negotiated for a while.
No, we've talked about black swan events. This is as white a swan event as you can imagine. We knew 6 years ago that this was going to happen on September 30th of 2024. There was no doubt about this. Everybody knew it was going to happen. And I am firmly believe that the ILA leadership, and it's not just Harold Daggett, it is the ILA leadership knew they were at a good inflection point here. They had a lame duck president. They have two presidential candidates who are running who have very different views on labor in many ways. You've got kind of the labor workers kind of with Trump. You've got labor organizations with Kamala Harris. You have Biden, who is on a picket line for the UAW and says he's pro-labor. He has announced that there's going to be no intervention by the U.S. government, no Taft-Hartley. So he is, in matter of fact, in his presidential statement, in the second sentence, he talks about foreign-owned shipping companies. You may remember when he was in L.A. that time on the battleship Iowa, telling the shipping companies because of their freight rates, I should come punch you in the nose. They knew that this is going to happen, and I was just doing an interview yesterday with the Christian Science Monitor, and they asked me, he's like, why do you think the ILA is doing this? And I said, so that the Christian Science Monitor would write about longshoremen and shipping. That's why they're doing it, because that's the only way to get the attention. And, they hate what's happening with the hurricane, but as well as I do, there's nothing coming off those ships right now that would be heading up into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia immediately. This becomes an issue a few weeks later.
Yeah, it could. And if this persists. Now, before I let you go, that's my last question. It's prediction time. I was asked this yesterday on LinkedIn. I was DM'd by a few people. How long do you think it's going to last? And the more I thought about it, I stuck with 17 days. I got 17 days. Maybe I'm a little long. Are you over or under that sell?
So I initially sat there and said they'll get back to the table on Friday. Start negotiating. They'll stretch it through the weekend because they want the weekend news cycle, and then hammer out a deal next week. But listening to Daggett right now and listening to what's going on, it may stretch out another week. They may want to push this a little bit more. Again, I think they got to be really careful about going past the bar where this really starts impacting people and they start feeling it. And then that's when they're going to lose the popular support for them. And, the question is, do they have a media campaign? Do they have a strategy out there to propel their knowledge? If you were like me at midnight the other day waiting for the notice that they're going on strike, there was no notice. I had my fax machine fired up because that's the way they seem to communicate. But I got my notice by the live port cameras.
Yeah, we were watching the live port gates, exactly, to see and waiting just for people on social, because you knew almost immediately social media would be like the beacon of people just showing people on strike. So you, me, John, Craig, we were all up at midnight the other night. You could see us just tweeting up a flurry because I don't know. It's a big story. Sal, everyone go follow what's going on with shipping. Sal does an amazing job breaking down all this stuff, and he does an even better job on his Twitter account as well. Go to Mercogliano on Twitter. Sal, thank you so much. I know there's a lot to get to, and we'll probably have to have you back soon if this persists.
Dooner, it's great to be with you. And whenever ship happens, give me a call, man.
Yeah, and ship certainly has happened. It's all over my feet right now. So take it easy, brother. Gosh.